thank you to Michael, first of all, for inviting me to share a few views with you this morning, and also to Peter for providing what so far is a superb venue. Really good place. Right, the Mary Portas Report. Yes, I've been through it, as many of you have been. A number of views on the Portas Report, but rather than strip that apart, first of all, I'd like to give a few views as to why I think the High Street has become the animal that it is today, and then go on to selectively pick out a few of the Portas recommendations, those really which do impact and impinge and affect many of you who are independent retailers who are situated on high streets, because not all the 28 recommendations are particularly aimed at the independent. Now, in terms of the high street changing, the first part, my view, and I have been around the high street for a long, long time now, changing the high street have been an evolutionary process. Many of you who have the businesses who've been around 100 years and more and look back very fondly on the photographs that you have in your portfolios about when Great Grandad started it and how it moved through to what it is today, will certainly agree with that. And it is an evolutionary process which is going to continue. The second bullet point there, where the is in capitals, is not a mistake. The High Street as a location for retail, as a location for being sociable upon, is not dead. Absolutely not. I'm not one of the doomsayers who has put the black ribbon around the High Street. I think many will succeed and prosper and go forward very well, but some will die, and some have died already. Now, this may be right or wrong, but I think if we look back a little way, the High Street certainly has represented the local people in that location for many, many years. But I have a view, and it's not substantiated by any research, it's purely an idea, that local populations now are no longer based on geography. Local populations really are now based on communication. So let me explain a little bit about what I mean there. I think marketers can split consumers into many, many different types. What I'm seeing at the moment, rightly or wrongly, is that we do have a section of the consuming population who I've called herders. They want to be together, they want to herd together, they want to be a mass of people with very similar ideas. They are normally and usually, in my view, somewhere between about 12 and the late 20s, early 30s. They are the internet generation, certainly, and to herd they need to have large spaces in which to go, which do tend to take them away from the high streets, into the malls, and actually into the virtual reality as well, through the web. However, we still do have, I believe, what I would call sociable individuals. People who are geographically located in and around our high streets, people who do want to be social, they do want to spend time talking to their colleagues on the high street, they do want to spend time maybe having a coffee, sitting, chatting, whatever it may be, and just generally form groups who geographically are local and also have got similar views. And I think the high street has a huge part to play, many to regenerate themselves into more a sociable environment. And then we have what we call the invisible. This is not the same as the unwashed or the undesirables. The invisible are people who simply go about their business, they want a little bit of shopping to be done, they will do that on the high street, they're probably local. So there are two particular types of groups of people there who I think still have a great need for and a love of the high street, providing we as retailers give them something that they actually want and they actually need. Now, in terms of the key influences that have changed the high street, well, I've just mentioned some of the social changes, and I believe that social changes have always been the drivers of the consumer society that we live in. For the last 15, 20 years, I think we have seen what I call the celebrity disease. Now, that is a bit of a biased comment. I think the day of celebrity really annoys me intensely at the moment. If you point a camera at somebody, they immediately become a celebrity. And I think the celebrity disease actually is really more appropriate and appealing to the herders, certainly not to the social individuals or the invisible. But those social changes are taking place, we can't stop that. Many of you, and probably myself, will often say that we don't have enough time. Well, you can't make time, you can't take time away. There's 1,440 minutes in a day, and it's up to us to use them as best we might. But I think the value of time, we believe we do have less time, and that does actually make people want to either shop under one roof, which again we're talking malls, or actually be only 3 clicks away from the product they desire. That invariably affects the way that we shop. Now, the impact of technology, I think, also is there. There's no question about it. Now, in my mind, it's debatable whether technology is the architect of the high street's demise, or some high street's demise, or it's simply a tool which society uses to effect those social changes. However, we can't deny the fact that if you take the retail take in the UK today, it's about 300 billion a year. If you take the latest figures post-Christmas 2011, about 11% of all retail spend is now going through electronic media, through the web, through the internet, which is a significant amount. So they're clearly, unless we have a consumer and a retail expenditure which is growing at a similar rate, there are clearly other opportunities for people to spend their hard-earned money. That is a fact of life. We live with that, and many of us have got to harness that. We then come to brand power, which many of you know about, certainly those who are very heavily involved in watch selling, and that has moved also into jewellery. Brands have become stronger over the last 20 years, certainly, there's no question about that. And they have been moving from being national brands into international brands, into being global brands. And really the oxygen of a brand is mass exposure, and it's also control of the media through which they promote their brand, and control of the environment and the people who sell their brands. And if you're looking for this mass recognition, which brands really do, again, that lends itself to perhaps in many cases a non-high street environment. One of the other influences I think also is investment, and here I do have a criticism mainly of the many private sources and private investors, because for high streets particularly there has been a woeful lack of investment in many cases over the last few decades, and that is clear to see, and you can't blame people for that necessarily, insofar as an investor will go where the money is. And the money has been certainly in non-traditional retail to some extent, and also in very large malls. That investment, however, will flow back into high streets, providing the occupants of the high street will provide for the consumers something they actually do want. So I think, certainly from my viewpoint, investment is not lost forever in high streets. It will come back, be that private investment or be that governmental investment. Some of these secondary influences, well, retail economics, yeah, we can't deny that it has been a little bit difficult over the last 24 months, certainly. And to get sustained growth has been quite difficult in many cases, not just in some of the jewellery retail environments. We do need, certainly, an amount of turnover, profit to sustain business. I've done some analysis on quite a wide range of jewellery retailers over 2011. I split them into turnover groups. And some of you in the audience have already had those figures who are part of the EDF group. And it does become fairly clear to me that there is a ceiling which you have got to get over if you really want to make a decent living, whereby you can actually expand your businesses in future. And that ceiling is reasonably high. If we're looking at range sizes, I mean, part of globalisation certainly has been for the consumer that you have an almost infinite range of products that you can actually buy, either locally, nationally, or globally. And certainly if you're looking at range sizes, the choice of products that consumers either demand nowadays or have available to them is absolutely massive. And that again puts constraints on certain small space retailers. They can't offer the full range that perhaps some of the consumers require, and that will lead them into the direction of actually being particularly specialist in some areas and doing less very, very well indeed. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for that. I criticise the investment in high streets. I will also to some extent criticise some retailers' expertise on the high streets that we see today. Those retailers who have grown, who have been very professional in what they've done, and there's many of you in this room today, have gone on to bigger and better and more prominent sites, which really has left some of the secondary, tertiary sites on high streets either empty or with retailers who either don't have the will or don't have the expertise to make their businesses better and more viable. And there are a number of retailers in any retail sector you like to name who really should be doing better and should have more effort into what they're doing to expand. Access and environment. Yeah, there is poor access by private and public transport into many of the small and medium towns that we live in and we operate in, and certainly something needs to be done there. The environment of many small town centres also is not good. That is partly investment, that is partly perhaps a slightly negative attitude in terms of making some high streets nicer places to shop in, whatever nicer means. So access and environment again needs to be worked on. If we come to Portas, the final part, Well, of the 28 different recommendations, I've picked out half a dozen there, which I think are important for the independent and the high street retailer. Because if you look, as you will have done, at the 28 different recommendations there are there, some really are outside the bounds of what a retailer can actually affect and a retailer can implement. But there are some here which we can do, or do something about. I think the idea of a town team, where you do have a visionary and a strategic, strong operational management team for high streets, is absolutely right. I would simply pose a word of caution there. If these town teams, however they turn out to shape themselves, when they come into being, they have to contain energetic, dynamic retailers who operate from the high streets in which they are. It cannot be given over to politicians and bureaucrats, because all that will happen there is administrative money will get spent. The real money will not get into the high streets. I've been around long enough and worked with City Challenge and all sorts of things like that, and I can quote you some figures if you're interested later on in terms of the amount of money put in per day put into a high street on things like City Challenge. What actually is put in and what actually reaches the street is actually quite criminal. So we need to have people like yourselves involved in the town teams. Business improvement districts, yeah, great lover of BIDs. Making those into super bids in a very similar way to town teams, I think is absolutely the way to go, with the same caveats I made about the town team. Should focus on making high streets accessible, attractive and safe. Yeah, the environmental bit I think is hugely important for many of the high streets that we walk down on a day-by-day basis. You walk down some high streets, I spend my life on the street, no comments from Michael there, simply observing what is happening. And some are just dim, dismal, horrible places. When you do see a nice high street with maybe the good balance of independent shops, with one or two small multiples, with maybe a small park where you can go when the sun does shine and sit and have a chat and be social with friends, those are the sort of high streets that we're going to be looking for the future. So that a high street in a particular town is known for being that place to go for that sort of pleasurable experience. I think Michael used the word becoming a brand in its own right, and I think he's absolutely right there. Large retailers should support and mentor local businesses and independent retailers. I think there is an opportunity there for us as independent retailers to actually ask some large retailers how they can support us, whether they're prepared to mentor us in some way. There's nothing wrong in taking, let's say, a local Tesco manager and for him to mentor an independent retailer. Now that may seem an absolutely stupid thing to do, but let's learn from other people, let's bring that expertise in. And it's not a competitive expertise to the mentor. So I think the larger retailers can and should support us if we ask for help and if we ask for support. And I think that's absolutely true. The contract of care between landlords and their commercial tenants. Landlords have become known to be really uncaring, money-grabbing, unfeeling, really rather nice people. But in that sense, yes, some are a little bit like that. However, let's just be honest about this. Landlords only make money if they've got tenants there. Now, yes, the balance, I think, probably has been a little bit imbalanced in favour of them recently. But also, look at the lease structures, look at the leasing code. How many of you have actually looked at the leasing code? Hands up. 2, 3. Right? Better work for the rest to do then, when you leave here today. Look and see what the leasing code says. It's a bit ambiguous in parts, but there are things that you can take forward to a landlord and have a really good discussion with them. By good, I mean one that you win. Know what the leasing code is and use it where appropriate. Be intelligent about how you use it. Run a high-profile campaign to get people involved in neighbourhood plans. Another question to you, how many of you have been to the council and said, what is our local neighbourhood plan? Eric Pickles will be very happy with you. So, oh, John, you have, right, okay. Fine.
With another hat on, yes.
With another hat on, okay, fine. At least you're honest about it. Okay, but have a look and see if there is a neighbourhood plan. If there is, what does it say? If there isn't one, why not? So what I'm really saying is self-help from this viewpoint is absolutely right. We've got to get off our butts if we want our high streets to really prosper in the future. We've got to lobby people. We've got to be a pain in the backside. Sorry, I'm getting a bit anal on this one, butts and backsides. But if that sense, get out there, hassle people, because it's your future, it's the independent's future. And overall, it is the high street's future. And I think what Portas does, if nothing else, and we'll see what the government response to that is, I think it's towards the end of this month, we'll see what their response is. But really, what I'm saying to all of us is, it's within our remit to go out and do things for ourselves, and lobby and harry, and actually do things, perhaps around those 6 areas. So, Mary, Not everybody agrees with your report, but I think if you pick out some of the points, there are things that we can do and we should do. Thank you very much indeed.